Sechte Beya, Daf Chav Ches Amud Aleph. Remember, we're in the middle of a sugya, so we'll see over a very big kitzer. The Mishnah we had a machlokes, Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim, weighing something on Yom Tov is not allowed in the regular way. The Chachamim say, B'chlal, don't even use a scale for anything, even for storage. Rabbi Yehuda allows a scale to be used if you're going to do it in the irregular way. He gives an example. You take a keli, that's let's say a pound, instead of using a actual pound itself, a stone that's a pound, you take a keli, and the keli you put that's a pound, and with that you could weigh. The Gemara spoke about two Amiroim that when they split their food and they also wanted to make it even, so they did it mana keneged mana. So they took one mana meat and put it on one side of the scale, and they put another piece of meat on the other side of the scale, and that's how Rab Chia and Rab Shimon bar Rebbe, Rab Shimon, the son of Rab Yehuda Hanasi, that's how they split their meat, mana keneged mana. So l'chayra, the Gemara asked the Shaila, it doesn't follow any of the Tanoim, because apparently mana keneged mana is a way that it is a way of splitting food. People do split food that way. They weigh one against the other. So l'chayra, the Mishnah only allows mamish a keli. No one puts a keli, a knife, on one side of the scale. So it's not according to Rabbi Yehuda that's even mekil, but it doesn't go so far to say that a mana is allowed, and definitely not the Chachamim that say don't even look at the scale. That's what Gemara asked the Shaila. Gemara said this is going to follow Rabbi Yeshua, an opinion of a Tana not mentioned in our Mishnah, but mentioned in a Braisa, and he goes a step further. You could even put, even though many times people do split and put in a scale pieces of meat until it weighs it out, and that's how they're splitting the meat. But this is normally people don't do it that way. It's called a shinui, and that is allowed to be done on Yom Tov. So they followed Rabbi Yeshua. Says the Gemara, okay, it seems that then the halacha should be like Rabbi Yeshua. Why should halacha be like Rabbi Yeshua? Because whenever we find a stam mishnah, like a specific Tana, and the Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi does not mention the name of the author, it's called a stam mishnah. So then we know the halacha is like that stam mishnah. Where do we find a stam mishnah that would indicate that Yeshua's opinion is correct, that one is allowed to put meat against meat? And that's called a shinui of the regular way. A mishnah got in B'chayres. And in B'chayres, we have nariches. One is allowed to sell the basar of the b'chayr that has a mum, is a koyin, his b'chayr had a mum, he shechted it, he's allowed to sell it, but he should not sell in the public market as you would sell, let's say, a shlomim that had a mum and you redeemed it. You should not sell in the public market and not put on a scale. You could sell and you should put on a scale. The b'chayr one should not sell in the public market and should not sell it with a scale. But you could sell it at home. How do you sell it to someone? You give him a pound of meat. So what do? So the Mishnah says you could take a piece of meat that already has a pound, it's a pound, a chulin meat that has a pound, put that on the other side of the scale to indicate the pound. Then put your b'chayr meat on the other side, and that's how you know how much you're giving him a pound. So you are weighing b'chayr meat, but not in the regular way. You're not taking a litra, which is the stone of the pound, putting it on one side of the scale. That's what the Mishnah says there. It seems this is Mamish Rabbi Yeshua. That means it's called a shtickle shinui, right? We're looking for a way to call a shinui on Yom Tiv. Rabbi Yeshua said meat against meat is a good enough shinui to be allowed to do it on Yom Tiv. And we see by B'chayres Tam Mishnah that they're also we're not allowed to sell it in the regular way. We're looking for a shinui, and the Mishnah says the Tam Mishnah you're allowed to put the meat against the meat. That's considered a shinui. So isn't there a raya that Rabbi Yeshua, the halacha is like Rabbi Yeshua? That's where we're holding in our Gemara. The Gemara is going to say no. The Gemara is going to say you took a very general or superficial type of comparison between these two halachas of Yom Tiv and B'chayres. But if you look into the details of these halachas, they're very different. So not necessarily Rabbi Yeshua here that would allow mana keneged mana would hold that their mana keneged mana is allowed. Maybe God he'll be machmir that you can't allow, and vice versa as well. The Chachamim, the Stam Mishnah, it says mana keneged mana by B'chayres is allowed. Not necessarily they will hold by Yom Tov it's allowed. So it was give us a svara now that not necessarily the two Mishnayos are b'shitose. It's one shita. If you hold Yom Tov, you could do it. It's called a shinui. So to by B'chor is called a shinui. What's the Gemara going to say? Say before kitzur balpeh. Then we'll go inside, and Rashi will explain it also. First of all, because Abishua says Yom Tov you could do it, doesn't mean he allows over there by B'chor you could do it. B'chor is kotchim. And Bizoy and Kotchim, maybe we're more careful to place a piece of B'chor, even though it has a mum, but it was Kotchim. On a scale, maybe Abishua would say, no, it's not allowed at all, even if you place it on the other side of it a mana, because Bizoy and Kotchim. That's Pashut. Now, what's the other way? The Chacham that say mana keneged mana is allowed by B'choros. Why would you think by Yom Tov it's not allowed? You're more mach by Yom Tov and Kotchim? So the Gedorim are very different. The guidelines of Yom Tov and the B'choros are very different. This is how Rashi explains it. Rashi says like this: when it comes to sale, people sometimes sell something and they put, instead of a weight, they could put meat instead of as a weight. People do that on the other side of the scale. That's called something done. It's not the regular way of selling, but it's done. However, when it comes to be mechalik means to
make a difference. Separate.
No, but to distribute. I'm going to take this and you take this. Yeah, to negotiate and say, well,
Yeah,
to distribute, right? Yeah. I'm going to have an animal, 2 pieces of meat. I will take half. You take. We're not really selling here. We're not doing a sale. It's not mechira. It's called mechalik. There, the regular way to be mechalik is actually by putting 2 pieces against on a scale and say, okay, well, looks like it's the same. Or makes maybe like it looks the same, or you could weigh it the same. So when it comes to mechira, perhaps putting a mana keneged mana, Rabbi Yeshua would say you should not do it. Why? Because it is a shtickle mechira. People do sell things that way, and therefore Rabbi Yeshua that allows it over here. No, this is okay. So chachamim there that say it's allowed. Chachamim that say it's allowed. Why? But there is it allowed? Because there the main thing is we're allowing them to sell it. We're allowing them to sell it. The only thing that has to be a shinui. So to sell in this way is a big shinui. Most people don't sell things by putting meat on the other side of the scale. So it's already classified as a shinui. However, the chachamim might hold on Yom Tif. That is mamish doing the regular derech because they're mechalik meat. When you're separating meat and giving it out to each other, you are not making a shinui. You're not making a shinui in your distribution of the meat because normally meat is distributed in this way. But we're looking Yom Tif to make a shinui. So by 2 people separating the meat and being mechalik the meat by putting it on a scale, 2 pieces of meat, that's not called a shinui because you're doing the chiluk in the regular way. However, if I'll be looking to do mechira, it will be called a chiluk. Takem Mefarshim saying Rashi that indeed, if the kavanah would be on Yom Tif to do a mechira, that means you come to buy meat from me, and I have a pre-existing pound, that's a piece of meat, and I'm putting it on the other side of the scale. In this way, the Chacham will say, this is considered allowed. Why is it allowed? Because no one sells meat in that way. People are mechalik meat in that way, but they don't sell meat in that way. And Yom Tov are looking for a heter to show how it should be a shinui, a different than normal. So when it comes, if 2 people are coming to be mechalik meat with each other, by merely separating the meat, putting on the scale, that's doing the norm, and therefore it's not allowed on Yom Tov. However, if one wants to sell meat on Yom Tov, selling in this way, mana keneged mana, is definitely called a shinui, because it's not the norm to sell in that way.
Okay.
The difference is because we see what these 2 amoraim were doing. By the B'chor, they use 1 meat as a pound. By the 2 Amiroim, they weren't using it as a pound. They were simply taking those 2 pieces of meat, a large piece of meat, splitting it in half, and putting it on a scale so they'll be mechal to meet each other. Indeed, there'll be another case that if someone asks a question, could I come and sell meat with not using a keli on the other end, but using a piece of meat on the other end? The answer would be yes. It will be more kuladik. Why? Because when it comes to mechira, no one sells meat in that way. And therefore, if no one sells it that way, Yom Tov is allowed because now it's a shinui. That's Rashi. Let's look inside.
Okay. What line?
So we're holding. Let's start from the Maisa.
That's the first one.
Let's go quickly. The last time. The line starts karnise, but then maybe 7 lines from the top of the amud. Karnise, yeah. Rab Chia, Rab Shimon ben Rebbe, Rab Chia and the son of Rab Shimon, son of Rebbe, shoikli mana connected mana. They would weigh one mana, one portion of it against another portion. That's how they'll split it on biyomtiv. If I want to command, who does this follow? Loik Rab Yehuda, loik Rabbanon. It does not follow Rabbi Rabbanon. Why? Ik Rab Yehuda. If it's come to Rabbi Rabbanon Mishnah, Haman, he says shoikli adam basar connected hakeli. He only allows connected hakeli. Or connected hakoifitz, or it's another type of keli, or it's an axe. Connected hakeli in only keli. Connected midachrin aloi l'chayre. Putting another piece of meat on the other side, that's too normal. Because if people are separating it that way, it's too normal. So it's not called a shinoi. According to Rabbanan, for sure not. They hold a mashgichin bekaf miznaim kolik. So you don't even look at a kaf miznaim. Yeah.
I couldn't find the place.
You got it? Yeah. But we did it last time already. But
Okay.
that but we're gonna.
That was last time.
Okay. Kolik. Inhu. You see, inhu. The word is in. That's the answer to the Gemara. Inhu. The line starts bekaf, and the middle inhu. See the word inhu.
Inu the other
Inu the avud. Rabbi Yeshua.
The first line starts with
Bekaf.
Inu the other.
okay.
And for the Gemara answers, Inhu, they, those two Amiroim, the avud, they did the Rabbi Yeshua. They followed Rabbi Yeshua. That's not mentioned in our Mishnah. We have the Tanya, we have in a Braisa, Rabbi Yeshua Oimer. Rabbi Yeshua says, Shoiklin mana keneged mana b'yomtiv. One could weigh one mana against another mana on yomtiv. And as we explained already before, it's not weighing it for the purpose of sale.
Okay.
Because it's weighing it for mechiluk. Rashi tells mechalkin habasar. You could distribute basar that way. Amar Rabbi Yosef concludes, halachic Rabbi Yeshua. It seemed halacha is like Rabbi Yeshua. Why? Hoyil tanan b'b'chayra is kavasei. Being we have a Mishnah, Masechta b'chayra, a stam Mishnah like Rabbi Yeshua. Where do we see a stam Mishnah like Rabbi Yeshua? The Tanan, we had a Mishnah b'chayra. He's pesuli amukdashim. And also the hektish, we already explained last time by Arichis, we won't say it again. But the other, for example, a shlom that became puzzle, and you redeem it while still alive, and you go and shecht it, even though the meat maintains some kedusha to it, you cannot shear the wool and do work with it. You should also not be allowed to sell it in the public market and weigh it. Nevertheless, we do allow it. Why? Because because who will gain if we would allow that? The hektish will gain, because the money goes back to hektish. And by b'chayr, the shoikli mana, can I get money by b'chayr? However, my b'chayr, we're not allowed to work with it. We can't shear it. You also can't sell it in the public market, and you also can't weigh it the regular way. Why? Because like we explained, Hana'asan is not the hektish. The kohen himself has ownership over this b'chayr, and the hektish does not get any carbon. The mizbeach gets no carbon if a b'chayr gets a moon. And therefore, we don't care to allow the more profit to be made out of this piece of meat, and therefore that goes to an individual coin. Therefore, we're concerned about the bizoyin of hektish, not to allow us to sell it in public, and also to weigh it the regular way. However, shoiklin mana keneged mana, but this way it's called irregular, taking one mana of meat that's not choy, and putting it on one side of the scale. Taking your meat choy when someone wants to come and buy it from in your own house, not in the marketplace, you could cut a piece of meat and weigh it against another piece of meat. That's not called and weighing it in the regular way, so it's not bizoyin hektish. That's what the Tanya there says in the Mishnah. Seems that the halacha like Rabbi Yeshua. Here it says, Stam Mishnah, one, we're looking for doing an irregular way of selling meat, and we said mana keneged mana is called irregular. And Yom Tov also, we're looking for an irregular way to distribute or sell meat, and we're saying Rabbi Yeshua says you're allowed. Rabbi Yeshua says you could do it. So l'chayre Rabbi Yeshua, like Rabbi Yeshua. And now we're holding now in our Gemara. Amalei Abai says it tells Rabbi Yosef, the dilma lohi. Maybe it's not the case. You can't compare both Gemaras, both Misagim. Ad kan, first is going to go one way. Ad kan lekam Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua over here that says one is allowed to separate meat on a scale, meat against meat. Hacha here. Only here. Elo deleke bizoyin kachim. You don't have bizoyin kachim, so he says it's a ma'aseh mit Yom Tif, uvd in the choil, right? Whenever we discuss the problem of doing it looks like you're doing something for choil. So therefore, there are bizoyin. We're not concerned that meat should have bizoyin. It's not the concern by us. It's Yom Tif, the day of Yom Tif. You're doing it in a regular way. I will hasam there. The bizoyin kachim. There, the meat is kachim. And we're more concerned about the meat itself. Maybe Rabbi Yeshua will actually be more machmir when it comes to kachim. Could be, I don't know. But we're more interested the opposite way. And also, maybe kachim loy, inami, or the other way. That means it's going to prove to us how not necessarily is the halacha like Rabbi Yeshua here by Hilchas Yom Tif. Why? Because maybe that Mishnah that's machmir when it comes to kachim, mixed with this makel, when it comes to kachim, that you could weigh money, connected money, maybe that Mishnah will act, that Tana will hold that here we are machmir. What's the svara like he says here? At kanle kam rabbanon, maybe the rabbanon there that are makel and say one could weigh b'choir against another money, hasam there, elam mishum deloy mechzik uvdin de choil. It doesn't look like uvdin de choil. What's the pshat? Pshat there is, this is not the way of selling. No one sells meat in that way. Putting onto a scale another piece of meat, no one does it. So right away, it's not looking like you're doing something choil with it, so it's allowed. Aval hacha, but here, like Rashi explains, that you're mechalik the meat, he's not selling the meat, he's merely distributing the meat. The mechzikut and the choil, that is the normal way to do it. And therefore, perhaps he will hold you machmir, so it's no rayid halacha like Rabbi Yeshua. Before we go weiter, let's go look into Rashi.
Rabbi Yosef was the Sinai?
Yeah, Sinai. And Rabbi was Iker Harim.
Because he's asking in the previous stop, he brought up this idea about the what they call the great people of Yerushalayim, that there's a proof in a particular way. Here he brings up something he thinks brings a proof for his idea.
So he's a bucky in the whole Sinai, yeah?
Okay.
Okay, let's see here. At Loihi. The line of Rashi, it's about 7 lines from the going down for the big lines of Rashi. The middle Loihi. The line starts with Likach Basar. Likach. The first word of Rashi is Likach, and the Dibra Maschil Loihi. Yeah?
Further down. Look here, the big ones.
Big lines?
Yeah.
Over here?
Loihi.
7 lines down from the big lines.
See, Likach.
That you will be lost.
Loihi. There you go.
Thank you.
Says Rashi, Loihi, the Gemara said, maybe you can't compare B'chayres, Hilchas B'chayres to Hilchas Yom Tif. Why? Lai Svira Luhu L'Rabbanon de B'chayres. Maybe the Rabbanon that are makel by B'chayres to allow money connected money, they don't hold Rabbi Yeshua by Yom Tif. Maybe they don't hold like Rabbi Yeshua who's makel here by Yom Tif money connected money. And also vice versa. The Loi Rabbi Yeshua, and maybe Rabbi Yeshua of Yom Tif does not hold Svira and he also does not hold B'chayr Shari. Maybe Rabbi Yeshua holds Yom Tif is allowed, B'chayr not allowed. Chacham hold Yom Tif is not allowed, and B'chayr is allowed. And he explains the second part, not the first part. Before Shem said, Rashi explain not why Rabbi Yeshua would not hold the other, because before Shem asked as a shaila, not going to get involved, but it's shver. Rabbi Yeshua could hold like B'chayr, that's not a problem. We don't have to look and say Rabbi Yeshua from Yom Tif argues with B'chayr. We wouldn't mind if he agrees with B'chayr. Our main thing is we want to prove how not necessarily the Mishnah of Chayres follows Rabbi Yeshua's opinion.
Right.
So why mention the first part? How Rabbi Yeshua might argue and say Chayres you're more machmir, and if you hold Chayres you're more machmir. If you hold you're more maker like them, that's not going to affect our Gemara, our sugya. We're only looking. What's our point? Our point is that the Mishnah there, the Stam Mishnah that says you're making money connected money. Maybe they will hold you machmir by Yom Tif and not like Rabbi Yeshua. That's all we're trying to prove. We don't really care if Rabbi Yeshua will hold there also you make it.
Okay.
But anyways, but actually doesn't explain explain the second one.
I don't understand.
Okay.
We want Rabbi Yeshua. We want to show we don't mind if Rabbi Yeshua agrees.
It's a b'chayros, that we don't mind.
But that would be a proof.
No. If the main thing is, if you could show me a svara that the Chachami, the Stam Mishnah of B'chayros, does not agree with Rabbi Yeshua in Yom Tif, that already would dispute our proof that Allah is like Rabbi Yeshua. That's what we're looking for here. Rabbi Yosef said Allah is like Rabbi Yeshua. Why? because the Mishnah B'chayres holds like him.
Right here.
No, it doesn't like him. The Mishnah was so the other way is not. We're not going to go. That's discussable. Let's go at Kali Kamra Bonon. Now we're going the way that's important to us. Now Bonon over the Hassam Elo Deloy Ovid Maisechoy. There, why do they allow Mona connected Mona? Because you're not doing a Maisechoy. It's not the regular way to sell meat.
Okay.
The Hassam Mechire. The point is Mechire. We should underline the word Mechire. Hassam Mechirehi. Over there, the person is selling the b'chayr meat. And selling meat, no one never puts on the other side of the scale a piece of meat. It's not the shteiger, it's not the norm to weigh meat that you're selling against another piece of meat. You're always weighing meat of sale against a proper weight, a liter proper weight. Right? But here, by Rabbi Shua, that he says one could distribute. Rashi says, and also Rab Chiya, Rab Shimon, Rabbi. They are doing something that they would also do in the weekday because they were not involved in sale. The chalukah he. See the word chalukah. Rashi before right above dividing. Rashi the word right above it. You see the line says the hasam mechira here. Here chalukah he. So here, if indeed they would be involved in mechira, yes, that would be a great shinoi to go put another piece on the other side of the scale. But being they're involved in chalukah, that's normally how people are doing chalukah. So there's no shinoi. So it's uvdi the chayil they were doing as they do in the weekday without a shinoi. Let's do it again. Why are they doing uvdi in the chayil? Where do we see? Because the chalukah. This is the way all people are doing chalukah. That's how they separate, they distribute. So the Rabban maybe don't look at Bishua because they would say that when it comes to Yom Tif, one is not allowed to be mechaluk their meat that way. That's mamish uvdin the chayil. But when it comes to chayil, where they were interested now in doing a mechira, which doing it in that way is called a shinu, they would allow it. It's not actually don't make this whole difference mechira and chalukah because it doesn't say in the Gemara these words chalukah mechira. But that's an Rashi learn, so we're not going to. There's no taste. We're going to go back to now. Let's go back. Let's go back into the Gemara. Now Gemara has an interesting observation. These two Amiroyim looks like they were not so comfortable with each other. You take that meat, I take this meat. So Reb Shimon ben Rabbi and Reb Chiya, they were particular, putting it onto close brothers, for example, would not really care. Listen, I'll take that, you take that to Mechalek. So L'chayda, we see from other places in Shas that they were mamish like brothers. Reb Chiya, there were 4 Talmidim there of Rebbe. Bar Kapara, we'll see soon. Reb Shmuel ben Rabbi Yosef, Reb Shmuel ben Rabbi Yossi, and Reb Chiya, and Reb Shimon ben Rabbi. Yeah? So 4, Reb Shimon, the son of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. So 4 Talmidim discussed in other Mesechus. Yavam is different stories, different Yonim. So we always see from those in Yonim that Reb Shimon ben Rabbi, the son of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi of the Rosh Hashiva, he was very close friends with Reb Chiya. Reb Chiya was like a family member. The other ones were a little bit also there, but there was a little akpeda amongst them. But here, the Mamashik family, so Mara has a question. They were so close, and they didn't really care. They should even care about putting meat on a scale. That's what the Gemara Shailu is like.
They were Amorim.
Amiroim, first generation Amiroim, children, child of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. Rab Shimon.
When it comes to money, you know.
You have the Gemara there. You have also Rafina Rab Ashi. The last generation they made the Gemara.
But every single Yerush is machlekes.
Yes, among tzaddikim also. Yeah. We'll see here, the Gemara that 7 fish were ordered to Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi's house, and 5 of them were found by Rabbi Chiya, and they didn't really care. It was mamish like it was part of the family. So we see mamish 5 fish were found in Rabbi Chiya's house, and Yehuda Hanasi didn't make a difference because them they were mamish brothers. But even then, Ravina Rab Ashi, I think the Gemara says about Mitzia. When it comes taking a loan, you should need to have a loan. You should have to have a star. You should always have a star. Even your best friend, it's always good to have it in writing. So Ravina sent to Rav Ashi, it was at Shabbos before this man. I don't have 10, and Rav Ashi was very rich. I don't have a loan of 10 zuz. He says, I have to give you a star and this. He says, he wanted to test him to see if he's going to do it or not. Anyway, so he was makbetaka to write a star. There it says, for other reasons, because sometimes the person might forget, not intentional. Let's say you forgot you gave him a loan. So
he forgot that he took
right,
it.
so it's not
He's going to be too embarrassed to ask
right.
him.
That's choshid.
He's
Someone
very close to
right.
him.
So these two Amirah, not choshid that they're deliberately going to not pay back a loan. Chas v'sholem. But Pashut it's a different inyanim. It's important. You're saying if it comes to money, it comes to friends, it's just for the sake of clarity or to remember, put it down the shtab. And let's see here's about the fish. Let's see. So, Gemara Nachashayla. The Gemara, the line starts with Memro. For you to tell me, you're going to tell me the Kapti Hadodi, they were makpid, right? They were careful with each other in such details of exactly the meat, how they should distribute the meat. For how there's a story, Hanu Shev Benisa. Shev is 7 Benisa piece of fish. The also obey Rabbi. It was sent, delivered to the house of Rabbi. 5 fish were found by Rabbi. Well, they copied Abshim Rabbi, and Abshim Rabbi didn't have any kpeda. They were like so close, like brothers. How could the story make sense? Indeed, it's a very stark shaila. So because of the shaila, the Gemara is now going to say it must be that the names have to be changed in the story. It can't be with these two individual people, Rabbi and Abshim Rabbi. Either, Amra Papa, Shodi means to throw. Shodi Gavra Beinayu, throw in a new person amongst them. In other words, take one of them out. Either take out Abchia and put in one Amayra, or take out Rabshim and put the other one. Which one? So, Rabchia. Either it's Rabchia Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yasi, so be Rabchia not with Rabbi Shimon, but rather with Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yasi, or Rabbi Shimon Rabbi Ubar Kapanim, put him back Kapanim. It can't be those names because of this closest they had to each other. To look into Rashi and the bottom. What?
This is very good.
This is the 4 year. I think the Rambam says more. There's the more names. The Yanai and the Asi also. I mean, Rav was from the younger Talmidim of Rabbi Danasi. I think Shmuel never saw Rabbi Danasi. He was in Bavel. But Rav and Shmuel both seemed like they were. And Rav used to tell Shmuel about the Shiurim if you would have been there. But they were both. But Rav came to Bavel later. Shmuel was before. But the Rambam says, but these are the 4 very important Talmidim of Rabbi Danasi. Look into Rashi. Rashi starts that line is Seviro, right? Just after we left off. Umi kapti adadi. Are they makpid one and another? They're makpid to distribute basar dafke when they weigh to be exact. They will mevater one to another. Mevater means they give in, right? They didn't really mind. They would one take from another because of love. They're mamish like family. Where do we see? There were, says Rashi, Shiva dogim, 7 fish. Shabo leRebbi. It came to the house of Rebbe who delivered. V'nimtza shenot leRebchia chomesh v'hilich lebeisei. Rebchia took 5 of them and took it to his own house. V'kapid Rab Shimon beRebbi. He wasn't makbid loyim mishal avihu. It's for my father. And vishal avi. And who nizen yesim imeni. This is for my father, and you are getting more mizaynis than me. He wasn't makbid. So you see, they were mamish like brothers. And if they want Rabchia Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yasi, either Rabchia Shmuel, hayu oisen shechalku. These were the 2 that were mechalik to meet one another. And hayu the gili likach zeim zeh. Because they were accustomed to taking things from each other, splitting things. But they weren't that close. The chiba of Rab Shim Rebbe and Rab Chia was mamish brotherly, and the others were also close. They were usually splitting things with each other, but not in this hakpada because they were not that close. Next mission.
What would be the Havamim without Rashi?
What?
What would be the Havamim?
Which Gemara?
For this little piece right here, 2 friends.
Yeah.
Isn't it obvious that they're really close and then we don't need Rashi to explain it?
About the fish telling it to Taich. Maybe
exchanging the names.
And Shodile, and Shod is a lotion, Shodi Gavru Beinayu. Like, what would, if you just know Aramaic, Shodi means to throw.
Yeah, but
Shodi, throw a man amongst them. Like,
as soon as you change the name, you say this.
And also, Rashi tells us another very important. I should know about Shmuel and Bar Kapara. They were also mechalik amongst each other. He's saying 2 things. Rashi's saying 2 things. First of all, he's saying they were also accustomed to be eating at the same tables because they were mechalik zamizeh.
Okay.
However, they were going to be makpid, even though they were mechalik with each other. Other people maybe would not even be on their table, right? They wouldn't be sitting at the table. Other talmidim would be separately. But these 4, they were very accustomed to sitting and eating together. But amongst those 4, these 2 would be makpid. Okay. Those 2 are brothers makpid. I don't know, it could be. To clear what Rashi is explaining. Also, Shev Benisa. Shev is 7. He says Shiva dogim. Or touching chef. Okay, can be medayik larim yonim, yeah. Benisa is a fish, yeah. Okay. And nune, in Aramaic, fish is nuni, not benisa. So maybe what's the limit between benisa and nune? Maybe it's a type of how it's packaged, if it's already packaged or it's not, or it's in the water. Live fish is called nune yama, and these are okay. Weiter. Ein says the Mishnah, ein mashechizin es hasakin b'yomtiv. One should not sharpen a knife on yomtiv. Any knife, a knife for shechita or a knife for cutting meat. It wasn't sharpened. You want to sharpen on yomtiv, you can't do that on yomtiv. However, al masiyah al gabi chaverta. You could take one knife. Masiyah is also to sharpen it in a different way on another knife. It's a shinui.
Not with a stone, but with a knife and a knife.
A knife and a knife, you could do it. So we're going to start in the sugya. What is this? What's the problem here? So first of all, okay. So let's see Rashi. Mashchizin gives you a French word. Avomasi al gabi chaverta the mishani miderech choil. You're changing from the way you do it b'choil. B'choil you do it on a stone. You're doing it on top of another knife. Now, why do you have to change? Because it's not allowed to be done on Yom Tov. Why are you not allowed to do on Yom Tov on a stone? He didn't say it. Gemara will tell us soon. But the Pashtus, it's machshira oichel. Oh, but that's what happened on Yom Tov itself. So the Pashtus will see from the Gemara. If it happened before Yom Tov, yeah, indeed, even there will be no day that says you could do it on Yom Tov. But if it happened on Yom Tov itself, that it wasn't sharpened, you need to have a sharp knife to make it to get it sharpened. Then Rabbi Yehuda holds machshire oichel nefesh, preparing for also mutter and Yom Tov. That's going to be the sugya next time, but we'll get to it. Maybe today we'll go quick. So Taka al Mishnah would not follow Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda says not just to touch the food itself, you could do it like applying fire to food to cook it, but also preparing your knife. Machshire oichel nefesh is also allowed on Yom Tov. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, l'choira, you don't have to make any shinu. You could do it itself, mamish. According to the Chachamim, that they say that the Machshira Yichal Nefesh is also on Yom Tiv, you're looking for a shinu, and if you don't be shinu, it's already allowed. That's our mish. That's going to come later. But the first part of the Gemara goes into the details about what kind of stone or piece of wood are you planning to sharpen your knife with that we say you're not allowed to do it. Okay. So there's going to Amar Rabbi Huna lo yishon el mashchazes shel even. What the Chachamim say is not allowed. It's only mashchazes shel even if it's from stone. Avol mashchazes shel eitz, and if it's from wood, mutter one is allowed to sharpen his knife on a wood. Why did the Mishnah not say it? Because the Mishnah already gives the heter of one knife on top of another knife, right? But apparently, according to this memra, there will be another thing you could do. You could either do it knife on top of knife or knife on top of wood. Well, we're going to see the difference, but that's not so posh. Omar Rabbi Yehuda, Omar Shmuel. This on this statement of Rabbi Huna, the Amrit shel Evan Asur. This that you said on Evan is Asur. This is who said that Rabbi Huna made that difference and says Evan Asur. Eight is mutar. Lo Yamar was not said. El Chadita. Only when it comes to sharpening your knife is Asur on the stone. Avolahavi Sham Nunisa. But to take off the shuma on the fats of your knife, and you want to use a stone just to take off the fats, mutter, that will be allowed. That's what he said. Miklal kuntais. What's about the stone, the eights? Miklal the bishal eights. I feel lechadadanami mutter. If you're telling me the stone that we said is also versus wood, that's mutter. But what is also only to sharpen? But taking off shemen shuman is mutter, meaning the eights, even sharpening is allowed. Clear, right? That's how some people learn this memra of Shmuel. So this memra of Shmuel will be now taught in 4 different ways. We don't know how. When Shmuel made a statement. Shmuel said this was only said to sharpen, but not to take off the. This is only said. This was said. That's said. But sharpen and sharpen and not and fats. Yes, that's what he said. But what did he say the statement on? This could be 4 possibilities. Either on the first part of Rabbi Huna's statement, or on the second part of Rabbi Huna's statement. Either on the first part of our Mishnah, or on the second part of our Mishnah. Basically, on the part of Heter, or the part of Isur. Rabbi Huna said a statement. Evan, Osur. Wood, Mutar. So what did Shmuel say? He was speaking about the first part of the statement. Now, when you said osur, it's only sharpened, but not taking off fats. Then we could deduce from there, however, the thing that's mutter, which is wood, even to sharpen.
Mm-hmm.
Or did he make a statement on the second part? Now, when we tell you're allowed to use the wood only to sharpen, only shamnunis, only for the fats, but not to sharpen. Then you could do some there on the wood itself. Both is osur. Or his statement was on the Mishnah Gar. Mishnah also has two parts. First part, isur, doing it on the mashchezes. Second part, on another knife. Same idea. Would you say Shmuel said a statement on the part that's osur, and he said you should know, what's osur, only to sharpen, but fats is allowed. And you could do some there, knife on top of knife, even sharpen is allowed. Or his statement wasn't the second part of the Mishnah, the part of heter, where knife on knife is allowed. When he allowed knife on knife, only to take off fats, but not to sharpen. You do some there, but knife on top of the mashchezes, you don't to anything. That's going to be basically how we come out. So there's 4 ways of how to learn what Shmuel said. We don't know. So that we learned the first way divided, the most makeldik way, that he said you should know even on the wood it's possible to use the wood to take off the fats. That means on the wood would be allowed to even to sharpen. That was we learned scenario number 1, right? Okay. Some learn this on the sefer of this member of Rav Huna. Mishal Eitz Mutar. Rav Huna said, if it's from wood, you're allowed to, and on that we Amr Abu Dama Shmuel. Oh, the Amr Bishal Eitz Mutar. This time we said Eitz is Mutar. Le'amar wasn't said the heter Allah Havisham Nunisa to take off its fats. To sharpen. We're going to say is also on the wood. Miklal, you could see from there. The Bishal Evan, what would he hold when it comes to the Evan? I feel Havisham Nunisa also. They even take off the fats is also. Those are 2 ways to learn it on the memory of Rav Huna. Now we're going to ikdamas lamas nissen. Some learned Shmuel's statement on the Mishnah itself. We also have the ratio with isur and sefer heter. And it goes on. Ein mashchizin es asak b'yom tiv. Mishnah says you should not be mashchizin. You should not sharpen the knife on Yom Tiv. Rav Yudah Shmuel, and this Shmuel said, lo yishanu this isur of being mashchizin asakin. Only when it comes to sharpening, I will have a shaman. This will take off the fats. Mutter, you could. Miklau, you could do some there. Dalgai be chavet, but a knife on top of another knife. I feel the chavet and ami mutter. The sharper also be allowed. We could imagine law sefer. Some people shmuz it on the sefer. It says sefer the heter. Avul masil gabe chavet. It says knife on a knife. You're allowed to. What is allowed? What is allowed to be done knife on top of knife? Rabbi Shmuel, he wasn't taught you're allowed to to take off its fats. To osur, you can't sharpen. Miklau we see from the mashchezes. I feel Havisham Nisa is osur also. That's a chat. Yeah. Right. Let's go back. Next was the Gemara. Man tan the mashchezes osur. Who b'chlal is telling our Mishnah? It says you're not allowed to sharpen a knife on Yom Tiv. Oh, Rabbi Chista, the loik Rabbi Yehuda. It's like Rabbi Yehuda. The tiny with the Rabbi said, "Bein Yom Tiv l'Shabbos." There's no difference between Yom Tiv and Shabbos. Ella oichel nefesh b'vat. This is actually a Mishnah in Megillah, right? Megillah has the ein bein, many ein beins in the Mishnah of Megillah. One ein bein, there's no difference between Kippur and different. And when it says Yom Tiv and Shabbos, it's only oichel nefesh. You're allowed to cook and do malacha for oichel nefesh. That's the Tana Kameh. That means only oichel nefesh. That's it. Rabbi Yehuda matir af machshira oichel nefesh. Rabbi Yehuda says that we're also allowed to do not just oichel nefesh malacha. You can do malacha of machshira is oichel nefesh. So that can't. Our Mishnah that says one is not allowed to sharpen a knife. That can't be Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda would allowed. He would allowed to sharpen a knife because it's machshira oichel nefesh. They darshan. They say in your name halacha Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda. So he responded, Yehi Raiva. That means like Yehirotzim. I wish the whole Kihani Mili Mali, so all these good words, these things that are very good, I agree with. Tidrushun Mishmoy, they should say in my name. In other words, he agrees, very good. If they said in my name that I saw Rabbi Yehuda, I'm very happy about that.
Why did we decide halachas like Rabbi Yehuda?
Wait, we'll see soon. But they said the Vayner we see now. We say now that this is what Rabbi Chista says. Before I should say, you see from the last part of the last Gemara that he holds that way. But let's finish up with the Gemara. It says Gemara. And he says like this: Have a ka'imno. I was standing, kamei the Rove in front of Rove on Yom Tif. Have a komave next to it. He would put his knife, sharpen or place his knife or rub his knife apuma on the peh, on the rim of the kula. As she says, the kula is mishafshif sakin al pi hasal. On the rim of the basket, he would rub his knife. And I told him, is the master doing this to sharpen his knife? Or is he doing it to take off the shuman on the knife? And he told me, I'm doing it merely to take off the shuman. But this Amir, but Rabbi Chemya says, I really saw that his intention was the lechal tekovim. He was really doing it to sharpen. He said a sheker. He didn't say a sheker. The first we say what happened was there was shuman on the knife, and he first took the knife to take off the shuman. After the shuman, he thought he saw it needs to be sharpened as well. So he went further and sharpened. So when he's saying take the shuman, he's not lying. If Mamish came in just to sharpen, he would not be able to say a lie. But upon him, well, why did he? If he holds you allowed to sharpen, why is he not saying yes? I sharpened. He says, why is he hiding it? So because somebody hold halacha vein moedin kain, that there's certain inyanim that the halacha is like that, but you don't in public announce halacha is like this. I should tell us why in this case you should not announce it, because we'll see later. Even Rabbi Yehuda that does allow melacha for machshir eichel nefesh says, like we said before, only if you could not have done it before Yom Tif. If you could do it before Yom Tov, you can't. So we're worried the person might, if we make a blanket heter and say, you should know, all machshir eichel nefesh, you'll have to go on Yom Tov malacha, people might not make that difference and might even push things off from before the Yom Tov. But really the halacha is like Abiyuda. Indeed, if someone's faced with the case where on Yom Tov itself, there's a pagam in his knife, or the knife is to get sharpened, you were allowed to do it on Yom Tov apidin. Similar, I was in front of my master. The two Mefarshim, some say, Abaye and Rav's master, Rebbe, was either Rav Yosef or Rabbi. Some say it means Rabbi, some say Rav Yosef, Al Kapan, he came before Rabbi. He was rubbing his sakin. Richay is a millstone. Yeah. Richay is stone. That's what you could say. Before you could say on top of a saw was on wood. Here it's stone. So, Rabbi Yehuda says you're allowed to do on stone as well. So you shouldn't go into this. If what would Rabbi Yehuda hold about stone or not? But let's go to the Gemara. Some people say, I told him because made him came. Yeah, same idea that happened also the same story. Are you allowed to speak specifically about sakin of shchita? Before we speak of sakin mechlal, we know you have to show chacham the sakin beforehand, before you shecht, that he should check if there's a pagam, if the kosher sakin. Also for COVID, for the Talmud Chacham, people do it. But the din question, you have to check if it's a good knife or not. Is it called like doing
each time?
Each time. Before Sheikh starts his thing, he goes to. But those times, anyone had to do it like in the beginning because everyone shechted at home. Most people shechted their own thing. Right, to themselves. You go to a Chacham to get right. So here it's saying showing it to a Chacham looks like it's commercial. Showing it to a Chacham actually says it's like Afshamil said. It's doing something, maybe you're allowed to because you're allowed to check on Yom Tif. What's wrong with checking the knife? You can check your knife on Yom Tif. Why can you show it to the Chacham? It's just a form of checking your knife. So the same, you could be Baidik Sakin. Why can another person be Baidik for you? Here, going to a Chacham to his house and letting him do it, it's a public event, and that's something we try not to do on Yom Tif. But Taka will see in private, you could be Iboilud, Shailis. Mahu, Lahari Sakin the Chacham be Yom Tif. Rab Mari Breder Rav Bizna Shari. Rab Mari Breder Bizna said it's allowed. But Rabbanon Asli. Rabbi Yosef, what should you do? Talmud Chacham should check the knife himself, but he knows other Yidden want to use a kosher knife as well. So he won't go out and check their knife, because like we said, you shouldn't do it, it's too public. And then lend it out to them.
He checks it and he says,
yeah. So don't check their knife like they're coming to you, that's more of a public event. Rabbi Yosef says, Saki Sha'omda. Shanda means it stopped. That means it wasn't so sharp on Yom Tif itself. Mutal echad be Yom Tif. If before Yom Tif, we'll see in Rashi, it was. No. We'll see through chticher. It's washing the Rashi. It's going to be chticha. Chticha means kari, not shchita necessarily. But here it's not pagam mamish. We'll see soon. If it's mamish a pagam and you want to shecht, then you're like, you're mamish misakin it because you're doing tikkun here. Now it's unusable and I'm making it usable. But here it lost its sharpness to it. Amdo. B'yamtiv yolatu yamtiv. V'hani mili when hu de paska agav duchka. Only if it stops so much before yamtiv that you can't, that it's much harder to cut, and therefore you want to sharpen it. However, we'll see it soon, Rashi, if before yamtiv already, you were not able to cut with this knife, and you did not do it out of Yom Tif, then you have to. Then you can't do it on Yom Tif. We're going to stop here, but let's do Rashi. Okay, that's going to be the next sugi of Gemara. I don't know if you Rashi last. Let's turn back. Let's finish up over here. Yeah, we did it, or we didn't do it yet. Okay, weiter. Rashi from Gemara. It looks like, why should you not do it of Evan? Because it looks like it really makes the tukon, it makes it very, very good, sharp, and it looks like you're attacking big choils. The whole Lashon Rashi is very shver. What Rashi is saying here is, the problem with doing this is because it's long term. When a person sharpens a knife, the main usage you'll be using a knife is for the choil, because you might take a knife. The same way you can't cut. Why can you harvest wheat and grind wheat on Yom Tif? Okay, do it for Yom Tif. That is an activity that's meant for long term. So therefore, it's also that I should attack. Miklal b'shal eitz. Gemara could that. Gemara is medayek. With the uki Rabbi Yehuda isur b'shal even. Rabbi Yehuda says the isur is from stone. So it seems the belachadete. The belachadete you can't miklal the beitz. Lechadete do shari. A wood you're allowed to even sharpen. The man, the osar, the osar Rabbi Huna b'shal even shari the kavasol b'shal eitz, because he who said this is also from even said eitz is mutter. That's how we learn. Ik the master law Rabbi Yehuda a sefer the milsa Rabbi Huna. Ik the master law Rabbi Yehuda a masnissen. Why milsa Rabbi Huna? The chadad do have tikun lahavi shamnunis eine elo kadocha ba'almo. To sharpen is tikun, and to take off the fat is just cleaning, was allowed, is washing, which is allowed on Yom Tov. Last line of Rashi, Matir af machshira eichel nefesh, the time mishum, the reason why the Yehuda says it's allowed, eichel nefesh, the dorish yaseh lochem, the cholz or chechem will have a next year. The Rosh Hashanah knows that you're allowed to do malacha from eichel nefesh, machshira eichel nefesh. The shira mishmach nidresh mishmech. Should I go dash in your name? You're allowed to. Next Amar on top of Rashi, Mabel l'sakino apuma de kula. That he rubbed it, says Rashi, Mishaf Shef Sakin al Pi Hasal. He rubbed the sakin on the rim of the basket. Halachik Rabbi Yehuda, the halachik Rabbi Yehuda, mutter kol ish, lasais, every yid is allowed to follow Rabbi Yehuda and do malacha for mechshirei chal nefesh. Aval ein meidin when Rabbim came. Don't make it all. Rabbim came, shaloi, Rashi explains us why. Shaloi zalzalu, you should not be mezalzel. After the F Shila soy b'boid yom. That's what we spoke out before. People might be mezalzel and be lenient, even if we should have been done before people. And the kol ham d'shirinon, and whatever we said you're allowed to, kigoyin sheskalkul b'yom. It's only when on Yom Tov it became a kulkol. Or he was busy yesterday. Because he later. Rabbi Yehuda is only machshi, only matir to do machshir only when you were not able to do that of Yom Tif, but not on Yom Tif. Ma'alaharis at tabach, the sheikhet sakal lachach of Yom Tif, v'dikle shetlo chama al tabach, ma'alaharis sakal lachach, v'shishchet shum behemo, ma'alaharis at Yom Tif. In Mexico, the chayil, the afsham mills, it's public. Should I tell limke beitlis you want to sell it in the market? Or loy mex it's not. Or la'atzme base sakin shleik look at your own sakin, the afsham mills. The chrifus should the sharpness will stop, and you can't cut with it. Even though Mishil yesterday 2 days he would start to become a kulka, how would you know that would stop? Not suddenly. You don't have nifkuma, but if it totally became unusable yesterday, they have a shari. Why? It's clear that you did not use it yesterday. Never the message should have done it yesterday. Just understand. There's a shit of Ran that looks like a Yehuda. So if a person comes